Welcome to this celebration of life for Wittko Francke. I'm glad to have you with us today in the virtual room, the Francke family, Heidi, Christian, and Michael Francke. Also with us today is the president of the International Society of Chemical Ecology, André Gonzalez, who is joining us from Uruguay. Good afternoon to you, Andrés. And also with us is the president of the Asia Pacific Association of Chemical Ecologists, Guron Wang, who joined us in China. It's 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning of this Sunday in China, and I'm glad to have you here. Also with us, the representative from the Latin America Association of Chemical Ecology, ALAEC, Carmen Rosini, also from Uruguay. Good afternoon, Carmen.
Good day to everybody. I'm glad and proud to be here as a part of this celebration to the life and legacy of Vitko.
Thank you, Carmen. Other colleagues are also in the virtual room. Some of them are going to give a live presentation. Others are giving a presentation via video. We have a long program with a mix of presentation, live presentation, and the presentation via video. They are normally short, in between 1 and 3 minutes. Vitko departed the ice on December 27, 2020, left behind a tremendous legacy, as we are going to be emphasizing today in various presentations. Chemical ecology, as a matter of fact, sustained lots of losses in the last few years. So before we start the celebration of Wittko Francke himself, let's remember some of our departed chemical ecologists. Gerald Meinwald left ice in 2018. Jerry is one of the founding fathers of chemical ecology, a mentor and a friend. Jerry was internationally recognized for his research, contributing hundreds of articles to the field of chemical ecology and advocating for the science at home and abroad. Koji Nakanishi determined the structures of more than 200 biologically active compounds, many of which occur in nature in very minute amounts. Koji was also a magician. Many of his keynote lectures were followed by magic shows. Chemical ecology lost a champion with the premature departure of Steve Siebold, a researcher with the United States Department of Agriculture, Forest Service, and an adjunct professor here at the University of California, Davis. He served the International Society of Chemical Ecology as counselor and the Journal of Chemical Ecology as associate editor. Students say that Steve played a pivotal role in their lives. Peter Landaud, a scientist from the United States Department of Agriculture, ARS, he played a pivotal role in applied chemical ecology. Peter Landaud developed the trapping system that reduced the so-called calendar spray for pest control. He also brings chemical ecology to the common market with the development of his traps for yellow jacket wasp. Desiree Dalloz discovered many novel isoterpenoids and alkaloid compounds of ecological significance. Jacques Pastil, a long-term collaborator, described him as a quiet man with a strong music and wine expertise. Jacques lost a friend and a collaborator. Chemical ecology lost another giant. Kyung-Saeng Bu, also known as KS Bu or Dr. Bu, was the driving force for the creation of the Asia Pacific Association of Chemical Ecologists, APACE. The name APACE, I remember very well, was suggested by Tom Baker in a meeting in 1997 in Taichung, Taiwan, when Dr. Bu was planning to initiate this so-called branch of the International Society of Chemical Ecology. Dr. Bu died with two dreams that did not come true. One, to have a unified Korea, and the other, to have an annual meeting of APASI and the ISCE in Korea. That one was planned for 2003, but during the first COVID SARS-1, the outbreak in 2003, the meeting had to be canceled, and he paid with his pocket money all the expenses for that cancellation. The legendary Kenji Mori published as many as 1,259 papers according to the ResearchGate. He's the only person that I know that recovered from a major surgery in a hospital bed in Tokyo, reading the Journal of the American Chemical Society. Vitko wrote in Kenji's memorial, he was a pioneer on the significance of stereochemistry in biologically active natural products. I hope the International Society of Chemical Ecology would create a platform, some sort of memorial lecture or something of that nature to honor the memory of all these distinguished departed chemical ecologists. But today, we are going to be focused on Wittko Francke. And the Wittko Francke and the Kenji Mori were very good friends and very good collaborators. They are almost unified as the spirocarbon and the spiroketal that the Wittko Francke identified as one of the compounds that his favorite compound. Chalcogram is by far Wittko's favorite compound. 1 year ago today, I organized this meeting, the reunion of the former presidents of the International Society of Chemical Ecology. It was the beginning of the lockdown, and I wanted to have a meeting so that we talk to each other about our normal life, if we can call it normal. Instead of calling for a meeting, where probably not so many people would show up for that, I tricked them and I sent individual emails to them saying that I had some very good surprise that I want to share with them, but I would rather prefer to do that in a Zoom call at a certain time. And I did that individually. Most of them responded, yes, I'll be there. And some of them didn't respond, but they were there. But Vitko, being Vitko, he was very careful about everything with the chemistry and with life in general. He called me. I was not in the office because of the lockdown, so I captured a voice message.
Hi, Walter. This is Wittko speaking. I received 2 emails from you, and I just wanted to be sure that it's really you, because I'm suspicious getting something like this to install at my computer. So I try to phone you again, or you can send a message to me. Thank you. I hope you're fine. Bye-bye.
I responded by email, and he came to the meeting. He was the first one to log in. He logged in before I logged into the meeting.
Yeah, because, you know, these days there are so many phishing and other tricky things. And when I phoned you,
right,
I was connected to your answering machine. But when you said Walter Leal, it sounded very strange to me.
So the day we have this meeting, I wanted to show you some highlights of that meeting with Wittko Francke that shows the Wittko that we know, a person that tries to engage everyone, and it was worried about the well-being of others.
Hi, Kobe.
Hi, Kobe.
Oh, good morning, Jerry. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, yeah. Hi,
hello, Monica.
Hey, hello, Wittko.
Hi, Jerry.
When's the last time I've seen Vitko?
Hello, how you doing?
Yes.
Sorry, Anne-Gen still has to turn on her microphone.
Anne-Geneviebe.
Anne-Gen, you must turn on your microphone.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
On the left, down at the left side.
I want to point out that everybody trusts Walter so much that we're all here not knowing what this was all about. I thought he was going to tell us he was stranded in Chad and he needed a lot of money to get home.
Vitko, how things with you?
Well, I'm fine. Everything is okay. the university is closed down as the others too. And Heidi and I, my wife and I, we are forbidden to going to the groceries, and something like this is all done by our younger son. So we are more or less imprisoned here, which is okay. Reviews are piling up here, and it's quite busy, I must say. But otherwise, things are okay. What I'm a little bit worried about my two of my grandchildren, because one will just up to finish school and the other is studying first term, and those have no access to the school or the university, and yeah, just a little bit less. So just finishing school is a stupid thing, not to be in examens. But otherwise, Heidi and I, we are fine, working in the garden as Jeremy does, and we can walk in the field and in the forest. The university is shut down, as I said, and this means also it's no chance to produce any reference compound for biologists who are waiting for the compound. This is
wine cellar not yet emptied.
Your
wine, you haven't emptied your wine cellar yet?
No, yet. We tried to. Should be too many bottles.
we can help you over there.
I would love, but this is just a virtual meeting, so we cannot have a virtual tasting of wines.
We are going to try today, Vitko. That was the last time that we, as a group, talked to Wittko Francke. Some other colleagues had the privilege to have one phone call with Wittko Francke. We exchanged emails and everything, but as a group, that was the last time. So Wittko started working chemical ecology in his PhD program. But the first paper that he published that put he in the center of chemical ecology was this paper in 1977. The identification of the chalcogram compound. The paper published in Naturwissenschaft, and one of the co-authors of the paper, Alan Renwick, is with us today. Here's Alan.
My association with Vitko started through my work on bark beetles with Pierre Vité in California. David Wood and Peter Vité discovered the phenomenon of aggregation pheromones in bark beetles back in 1960. And this led to a tremendous effort in the US to work on the chemistry of the compounds involved. Unfortunately, it was very successful, but nobody paid much attention to the European species. So when Vité returned to Germany in 1973 to take a chair position in Freiburg, he was looking for someone in Germany to collaborate with, and he was particularly interested in a little beetle called the Kupferstecher, which is a tiny little bark beetle. It's a big pest of spruce trees in Europe. And so actually, Vité had been a student of Wittko Francke's mother, Francke Grossman at Göttingen, and so there was a natural connection there, and they formed a partnership and started to work on the pheromone of Pityogones, the Kupferstecher, and of course Vité was thrilled that Wittko was so enthusiastic about it, and I went over to Freiburg to spend 6 months sabbatical at Freiburg, and I got a little bit involved in the bioassay aspects of it, monitoring fractions that Wittko was producing. And so this is quite an exciting time. He did add my name to this first paper on these spiroketals that he identified from the Kupferstecher. Every time we had a meeting in Hamburg, he invited a bunch of people to his house, and he was the most wonderful host. and he had a fantastic wine cellar. That is the thing I remember the most. He would disappear down to his wine cellar and bring up any kind of wine you could think of. It was really wonderful. So when we hosted the ISCE meeting in Ithaca in 1998, I tried to reciprocate. I invited a group over to my house, and Vitko showed up with a bottle of the finest cognac that you could think of. And so, and there was no way that my wine cellar could compete with his. But we had a good time and a lot of laughs. And I think what I remember most about Vitko is his a great sense of humor. He was a fantastic, his hospitality was great, and of course his science. And I think in thinking of things that we need to thank Vitko for, we shouldn't forget the students who passed through his lab. And one of these is Frank Schroeder, who we have to be thankful that he came to Ithaca. And he is now a key member of our staff at Boyce Thompson Institute. And it's nice to see him, the magic of his chemistry is what he came out of Vitko's lab. And so we're very thankful for that. So thank you, Vitko.
And thank you, Alan. So this was 1977. There was no email, no internet. Fax was still starting. There was no preprint. You have to wait for the journal to be published, print out, and send it to the library in the various countries. But Kenji Mori wasted no time. As soon as this arrived, he synthesized and solved the first chiral center. This compound has two chiral centers, one in the position 2, and it didn't escape my attention that he dedicated this paper to the 75th birthday of Adolf Butenandt. That was the first link of Wittko Francke and Kenji Mori. But they did not meet until a conference in Europe in 1979. And there is one person that knows this as a fact, that they met there at that particular meeting. That's Kenji Mori's widow, Keiko Mori-san.
Heidi, Christian, and Michael, I'm very sorry for your loss of Vitko. Please accept my sincere condolences for you from Japan. Vitko was really a nice person. Kenji was happy to have such a wonderful German friend like him. Vitko and my husband, Kenji Mori, who passed away 2 years ago, had been good friends for many years. Let me show you some slides. I think Vitko and Kenji first met at UChem conference held in Sweden in 1979. Since then, they had exchanged their science and stimulated each other. Vitko's support and suggestion had been great for Kenji's work of pheromone synthesis. I have many sweet memories of Vitko and his wife Heidi. We traveled around Europe together, and we often visited their house. We even stayed there. The outside dinner, which Heidi entertained us, was unforgettable for me. Their large, beautiful, and quiet yard was very envious for us Japanese, especially Tokyo citizens who are living in small places. When Heidi and Wittko visited Japan in 2007, we traveled with them. We stayed in ryokan and enjoyed onsen. There we had Japanese-style dinner. We even ate pufferfish, fugu sashimi, though I didn't think they liked it. We visited Miyajima, where floating torii of Itsukushima Shrine is famous. We enjoyed the beautiful scenery of the Sea of Japan, and Wittko and Kenji enjoyed beer very much. Vitko, I miss you. Thank you for your friendship. In heaven, did you meet Kenji? Be a friend with him and have plenty of science discussion there, and enjoy beer with him as both of you enjoyed it during our trip.
Thank you very much. That was Christian Mikhail back then, and they are now. And this photo here, Mikhail, his wife, Christine. Wittko Francke and Kenji Mori were keynote speakers in many chemical ecology meetings. He is one highlighted by Ritsuo Nishida.
Hi, everybody. It was almost 15 years ago when we held the fourth Asia-Pacific Conference on Chemical Ecology in Tsukuba, Japan. 2007, we invited Vitko to our opening plenary, and the closing plenary was Kenji Mori. Both gave us promising perspectives for the chemical ecology, as always, but sometimes with some caveat, particularly in chemistry. I never forget their invaluable encouragement and inspiration, and big laughs. We really miss the two great mentors.
Thank you, Ritz. Vitko and Kenji friendship was witnessed by many chemical ecologists. Here is one passage of this friendship that the former president of the International Society of Chemical Ecology, Anne-Geneviebe, witnessed.
It was in 1996 in Prague at the welcome reception of our annual meeting when Vitko was carrying in his arm a poor Japanese student to his bedroom because the student fainted after drinking only a glass of wine. This happened to people who have not the good enzyme for degrading the alcoholic beverage. He was one of them. And Kenji Mori saw that, and he was feeling offended because of the student. So he was very angry, shouting, saying he will see that with the Japanese embassy, with the parents of the student, etc. And when Vitko was calming him down, trying to moderate his mind, so he was very, very nice, smoothing the situation. So it's really my best souvenir of Vitko, and I think it's representing very well how was Vitko. Okay, I say bye to everybody.
Thank you, Anne-Jen. I go back to this UCAN conference in 1979 because this was such an important conference for Wittko Francke and for chemical ecology. And one of the collaborators of Wittko Francke that was there was Gunnar Bergström. Here's Gunnar.
Hello, everybody, especially the Francke family, and of course, Walter Leal. Perhaps I could contribute something from the early history of the phenomenon of Wittko Francke. Vitko and I met at an open international meeting on the chemistry of insects, which we arranged in Borgholm on the island of Öland, southeast Sweden in 1979. I showed a mass spectrum from an Andrena bee. Vitko was in the group, raised his hand and said, "I know what that is, a spiroacetal." We sat down looking at this and other mass spectra of bee volatiles. That way we made contact and the collaboration started. Very soon I found myself in Hamburg. I got to know Vitko's very loyal, nice and competent wife Heidi, with their many mutual interests, wines, oriental frogs, flute playing, nice food, sports, etc. Vitko had started with research already when at school, taught by his mother, Professor Helene Francke Grossman, in forest mycology. I'm very glad to have met her twice at home in Rheinbeck. Perhaps it was in 1984, after the first chemical ecology meeting, that we were invited by the Silversteins and the Simeones to a full-day excursion. Then I met when I met them on my first American tour in 1972, we had thought it was time to begin a journal for our new interdisciplinary field and to start an international society with annual meetings. Vitko, with Heidi and myself, now had time to go through many aspects of the journal and the society. Vitko soon took very active and important positions both with the society and the journal. Vitko maintained a central position in the area with a great many collaborations. He received many distinctions such as honorary doctorships. When he received his full professorship at Hamburg University, I had the honor to deliver a laudator. Vitko provided me with some photos, including one with him as a goalkeeper with a large number 1 on his back. Nothing wrong with high ambitions. When I showed it in the lecture hall, a very strong acclaim broke loose the German way. In a time when important human values are neglected, as in the Trump area, it is good to have friends who honor cultural values and to have friends to rely on for supporting good things. We wish the very best for dear Heidi with sons Christian and Michael and their families. Rest assured that Vitko has left a very lasting memory and an important contribution to chemical ecology with happy students and co-workers. To use a common Italian phrase, una bella presenza, una bella figura. Thank you, Vitko, for good science and many good times.
Thank you, Gunnar. So Vitko bonded with chemical ecology at this meeting. They made many new collaborators and the collaborators that he lasted for his entire life. Here's one of them, Christa Lofsted.
My first meeting with Vitko was in 1979 at the EVChem conference in Borgholm, Sweden. The conference was visited by the Swedish king, but Vitko was the king who made a lasting impression. He repeatedly raised from the audience, not only asking questions, but generously identifying structures during the presentations of others. It was a memorable experience for a PhD student like myself, and I think it was the meeting when Vitko really bonded with the international chemical ecology community. There was some years and distance between us at the time, but we came close both professionally and privately. Vitko was an outstanding, hardworking scientist and a dear colleague and friend. He identified, synthesized, and delivered with enthusiasm and commitment. He sent a student on the train from Hamburg to Lund with the samples to be tested. And if there was no student to send, he asked the conductor on the night train to bring the samples for a small fee. Between 1989 and 2020, Vitko and I co-authored 25 papers, and Vitko and Heidi became friends of my family. It was a pleasure working and socializing with Vitko. He took care of his many friends in all possible ways, often pulling the strings both on and behind the scene. He was generous with advice and in all other possible ways. In 2005, Vitko received an honorary doctorate at Lund University. He wanted to thank the faculty and asked me to invite them for tasting of German wines together with the local chemical ecologists. I told him that even if you are selective, this will become a big crowd of 39 guests. Then I have to buy more wine. I only bought 40 bottles, Vitko said. Having visited his friend, the bee specialist John Tenger at Öland, Vitko planned to stop by in Lund when driving back to Hamburg. He called me 4:15 from Öland. See you in Lund at 6:30. A far too optimistic 2-hour, 15-minute estimate according to Google Maps, and also for Vitko it turned out. 3 hours later he called me again. I'm in Perstorp. Vitko had missed the exit at Kristianstad, flying by at low altitude in his fast Volvo. He finally arrived an hour later for dinner and consultation, continuing to Hamburg close to midnight. No problem, I'm fine. Vitko was moving fast. He rarely admitted any serious problems, but told me some years ago, if you are 60 and wake up without pain, then you are dead. In spite of his health issues, he remained committed to his standards, to his family, to his many friends, and to chemical ecology until the very end. I hope that his spirit and wishes for good luck, as expressed on the GC in Paulo Sabrin's lab in Brazil, will stay with us. I'm glad you were here, but I can't help feeling a big emptiness. Thank you, Vitko.
And thank you, Chris. John Pickett was part of that meeting as well. John.
Thank you, Walter. Family of Wittko Francke, colleagues and friends, it's a great privilege to be able to say a few words about my interaction with Vitko. If we can go to the title. Oh, that's fine. We met and went on a trip to the Great Alvar, and we sat next to each other on the coach there because Vitko had just delivered a monumental scientific presentation in which he didn't just describe his latest spirochetal identification, he actually suggested that we were going to see these compounds playing a much greater role as identified semiochemicals, as the tools of chemical ecology. Unfortunately, though, he was rounded on by a number of greats at the meeting who were very critical of making such predictions. But I certainly believe that that is the way forward with science, and Vitko has been great in doing this. Besides identification and synthesis, it's actually forwarding the philosophy of chemical ecology that he's served us so wonderfully well. And I was spectacularly impressed by this prediction and supported it. I'd already seen the beginnings of spirochetal identification and their importance in plant chemistry. So we made friends, and I said, I hope your prophecy will be forthcoming and true. But indeed, it was brought to fruition that afternoon as we visited Bertil Kuhlenberg's field station in the Stora Alvaret. Tenger had got on his blackboard, as Gunnar Bergström says, some salient ions from a spirochetal. Vitko didn't just identify it straight away, he actually had the spectrum which he'd synthesized the compound of in his pocket as a slide. And of course, it went on to account for, there's the Angevante Chemie paper that he produced the second spirochetal identification in, the year after the Chamigran. And it was the new compound now that he identified in the realization of this, to some people, far-fetched suggestion that we would see a lot more of these compounds. And we did indeed, because also at that meeting was Ray Baker and other people working on the olive fruit fly, Dacus olei. And indeed, they were struggling with the mass spec identification. They couldn't make head or tail of it. And Vitko immediately realized that that was another spirochetal. And of course, he appeared on the paper with them. Well, Vitko and I have always had a rather jovial time at the meetings, and perhaps over flamboyant in my case at least. But in the last slide, we took a slightly different role. We decided that we would back off from the heavier drinking at meetings, though relishing the finer tastings and so on, but that we would move to an even non-alcoholic engagement with this. And we had a lovely time in England visiting orchards, traditional orchards, particularly Lord Selborne's orchard at the Blackmore estate. And then eventually in that year, we moved over to Hamburg, and I had the wonderful pleasure of staying with Vitko and Heidi, who I greet tonight personally, because it was so lovely. It was a wonderful opportunity in which to engage with Vitko, as we didn't normally do, because we were in full view. And although we were receiving accolades together and so on, we had this time of reminiscing and looking to where chemical ecology might go and how its underpinning with chemistry was going to be essential for the future as we absorb the new molecular engineering sciences. I greatly miss Vitko. I often think that I should be ringing him up and sharing a mass spec problem with him. but no longer. But his memory and his rigor in structured determination and the stereochemistry, and his wonderful warmth and engaging personality, which, as I said, I enjoyed in those few days, my most memorable few days with Vitko, though there have been other meetings since, and Heidi in Hamburg. Thank you.
Thank you, John. So let's go back now to Vitko's academic career, now from the perspective of a former student, Stefan Schulz, who became a very wonderful chemist as well. Stefan.
In 1973, he obtained his PhD within the group of Professor Heinz. He was a carbohydrate chemist, and Vitko chose his own PhD thesis theme, so he was really a single person doing work on his thesis, which was on bark beetle pheromones. So, and this was the first topic which he chose as his own scientific career topic. And because the university was expanding, he could stay at the university and found his own research group. And in 1979, he got his habilitation, which is required in Germany to become an independent researcher. Also, a very important member is his of Vitko is his personality. He was very energetic, very critical, but also very empathetic to other people, and was especially motivating and a great motivator. So he could motivate a lot of students, PhD advisors, and other researchers by his energetic performance. He used GCMS and synthesis in combination to advance his scientific topics. But what most impressive of him was that he has this typical structural feeling. So he could, in a way, sense structures by his big, broad chemical knowledge, and also his big interest in biosynthesis. He was very international, had a lot of international cooperations, and had about 65 PhD students he advised, and quite some people advanced in their own academic careers. He was honored by the German Chemical Society by the Otto Wallach Medal, so you could see that he was very active even in German chemistry world, but also by entomology. So the Karl Eschrich Medal of the German Society of General and Applied Entomology was also awarded to Vitko, so he was active in both fields. Further, he obtained honorary PhD from the universities of Lund and Gothenburg in Sweden, and so he was very well recognized internationally. His most beloved areas or structures were the spiroacetals, which are a typical class of compounds who is deeply connected to the name of Wittko Francke. But he also discovered big molecules like ant alkaloids with 10-membered rings, or worked on insect-orchid interactions and bees, and published over 350 papers in this respect. He was very influential to many people. Also to me, for me personally, he was the most important professional person in my life. And certainly I will deeply miss him and never forget him personally, and also his big contributions to the area of chemical ecology.
Thank you, Stefan. So Vitko had this very strong influence in the chemical ecology in Germany. And Monica Hilker, who was he's a former president of the International Society of Chemical Ecology, explained.
Hello. It has been a meeting of the German Entomological Society in the 1980s when I've met Vitko the first time. And he encouraged me to continue my research on, in those times, the chemical ecology of Chrysomelide. Vitko, I'm so grateful for all your support and all your engagement in the chemical ecology scientific community in Germany and all over the world. in Germany, you have initiated in the late 1980s a DFG-funded priority program on chemical ecology together with Konrad Dettner at Bayreuth University in Germany. And this priority program, initiated by you, Wittko, and by you, Konrad, this has indeed been the seed for establishing chemical ecology science in Germany, the seed for many later professorships and further programs and institutes. Wittko, in addition to all this enormous engagement for the international and also German Chemical Ecology Society, in addition to your outstanding chemical knowledge, I also will always remember your so supportive, so friendly personality, the funny and wonderful wine tastings we had together, the inspiring talks about science and life in general during dinners. All this will be unforgettable. Wittko, I will miss you and see you now somewhere, wherever you are, smiling and saying, yo, yo, Monica, lass mal. Wittko, thank you so much for everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Wittko also played a crucial role in the establishment of the Max Planck Institute for Chemical Ecology in Vienna. Here is Jonathan Garzenza.
Like the rest of you, we know that he was just a really incredibly gifted scientist and an excellent collaborator and a wonderful friend. But we are also very, very thankful to him because he was such a strong supporter of our institute over the years. Our institute would certainly not have taken the form that it has today without Wittko Francke. First of all, he was instrumental in Germany in really popularizing chemical ecology. In the late 1980s, he received funding for a cooperative German Science Foundation sponsored research group in chemical ecology that really had a big impact on how popular the field became in Germany. And then about 10 years later, then when it was time there was an opportunity to select new topics for Max Planck Institutes that were designated to open in the former East Germany, Wittko managed to get himself involved and listened to and really convince people that having an institute in chemical ecology would be something that would be very exciting. So we're extremely grateful to him for that, of course. He then became a member of our science advisory board and continued to be a very, very strong supporter of the institute. He was critical in insisting that analytical chemistry have an important place in the institute, and critical in helping us get the funds to buy all these nice analytical instruments and getting the positions for the people to run them. So he was very, very useful, always gave wonderful advice. I still remember him coming to all the science advisory board evaluations that we had, and he was so enthusiastic, bouncing from poster to poster, that all the students just loved him. I think some were a little bit scared because they knew that he was sort of the sort of person who he wouldn't hesitate to tell you if you had a structure wrong or the stereochemistry was not right. And yeah, I think some of us senior people also, when we knew he would be sitting in the front row, we also made sure that we checked our stereo centers and made sure our configuration was correct. But he just did everything with such enthusiasm and love and attention to detail that it just set a wonderful standard for us. And our institute certainly wouldn't look the way it does now without the impact of what Wittko Francke did. So I think on this occasion, we just have to just really appreciate how much he did, for all the enthusiasm, for all the friendship, for all the support over the years, and especially for all of those samples that he generously donated from his freezers. We're extremely grateful, and I think we hope that we can honor him too, and honor what he meant to the field by going forward with all the things that are important to him, and making sure that we do chemical ecology as Wittko would have done it. What a fantastic example he was. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Another MPI director, Wilhelm Bolland, Was a collaborator with Wittko Francke from the time way before the Max Planck Institute in Vienna. And they continued this collaboration through the days of the MPI Vienna and also after their retirement, one from Max Planck Institute and another one from the University of Hamburg. Here's Bolland.
I met with Wittko for the first time in the very early 80s when he visited the institute where I worked as a postdoc to give a lecture. And as we both were interested in pheromones and related compounds, we soon ended up in intense discussion about the use of acyclic and cyclic analogs of pheromones as means to unravel biologically relevant conformations for bioactivity. I always remember these discussions because it took almost 7 or 8 years longer before we really made this become reality and realized that only the flexible original pheromones were really active and not the cyclic analogs. But this is an example indicating that we very often spend time together on several opportunities to talk about science. And this became even more intense because Wittko and Konrad Dettner in this context also, they launched a research activity that was called niedermolekulare Wirkstoffe, die tierisches oder Insektenverhalten ändern können. This was paid by the German funding agency, and it attracted the attention of many scientists all over Germany into this common project. And we all enjoyed these 5 or 6 years where the project existed. Several meetings in Hamburg and in other cities of Germany. But it was not only recognized by the German scientists, it was also recognized soon by the Max Planck Society. Because the Max Planck Society in the early 90s had the aim to found in Eastern Germany as many institutes as already existed before in Western Germany. And for this, they needed a number of, let me say, potential subjects to which these institutes could be devoted to. And one of these subjects was, of course, chemical ecology or something related. And for this, of course, the activity of Konrad Dettner and Wittko Francke became soon a model system along which such an institute on chemical ecology could be outlined. And therefore, of course, Wittko became very much and very often involved in the early activities of the Max Planck Society, and he belonged to the very important persons which more or less influenced the direction into which this new institute developed. I should not end without thanking Wittko for his great scientific heritage. For all of this together, I thank this wonderful person, Wittko Francke, for his friendship, and of course, we'll never forget him. Wittko.
Thank you, Bolland. Paul Fanning, who served also in this advisory committee together with Wittko Francke, wrote, Wittko certainly was a key player in the early days of chemical ecology and one with a contagious sense of humor. Max Planck Institute became the center of chemical ecology, and he also produced a vice president for the Max Planck Society, who served for 6 years. Bill Hanson is with us today. He's a long-term collaborator of Wittko Francke. Bill.
Thanks, Walter. Dear Heidi, Michael, Christian, very sorry for your loss. And for all of us, of course. Wittko was for me friend, collaborator, mentor, the best chemist that I knew, nature man, and a strong supporter of everything we do. Let me just touch on a few of those issues. So we collaborated a lot together with Christer, and Christer already mentioned all of this, so I will not go into the details. As a mentor, we were at a conference in Dijon, 1994, the ECRO, European Chemoreception Research. And in the middle of the dinner, we were seated at different tables. Vitko came with his glass of wine, and then he said, Bill, we should go outside and talk. And then we went outside and talked with our wine. And then he said, if the chance came up, could you ever consider being a director at the Max Planck in Jena? And I said, yeah, maybe. And from there it went on. And then there was, of course, a lot of committees and stuff. But again, Vitko was this strong mentor and supporter. The best chemist, yes, without doubt. For me, as a non-chemist, as a neuroecologist, he was always a supporter. And just like you said, the rest of you, you always had to take care of the isomers and of the enantiomers and have everything correct. Otherwise, you would get a hit directly. And I think that was very good for all of us. And a nature man. And we both had our places out in nowhere. And I'm sitting in mine right now, out in the forest in Sweden. And Vitko had his in Finland. And we both enjoyed, and I still enjoy, going out there and just leaving civilization, letting your beard grow and so on. And going home from Finland once, Vitko and Heidi stopped here with us and we had a great time, had a good dinner, some good wine. And Vitko still had his beard and it was really enjoyable. And the same thing happened. That shows the friendship and the flexibility. We were invited, as many of you have said, for a good wine tasting with Heidi and Vitko. And it wasn't totally clear that we were bringing our kids. So suddenly we were standing on the doorstep, not 2 people to sleep over, but 4 people. It took about 3 seconds. Then everything was arranged and the kids had their beds and we could start drinking the wine. Interestingly there, Vitko had organized what is called a vertical wine tasting. So it was different bottles of wine from the same field. And then as we proceeded into the evening, around 11, 12 o'clock or something, Vitko asked me, Bill, what do you find any difference between these bottles? And I told him as I felt it, well, they taste more and more of horse manure the longer we go. And then he said, you're right, the phenolics. So again, the wine connoisseur of Vitko. So I was very happy to have a last talk with Vitko in December because we sent him something for his birthday and then he called me actually from the hospital in December and we had a good long talk and I'm really happy about that because we touched on all the things we did. Here on the pictures you see Vitko at the meeting at Bäckarskog in Sweden 1993 and to the left not wine, but newly smoked eel with Swedish bitter schnapps. Again, Vitko enjoying life. And that's what I really like with Vitko. Work hard, play hard, enjoy life. And that's, he is a role model to us all, I think. So thanks for giving me this opportunity, Walter. Thanks for organizing all this. And we will all surely miss Vitko. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. I myself first met Vitko in Beijing in the International Congress of Entomology of 1992, not the 2016. That's why we're wearing the pin today from that Congress. After we traveled together from Beijing to Kyoto, because that was the Congress of Entomology, annual meeting of the International Society of Chemical Ecology in Kyoto. And from Kyoto, we traveled together to Tsukuba, together with Jim Nation and Kenji Mori, by bullet train to Tokyo first, and then to Tsukuba to have one-day conference in chemical ecology in Tsukuba. Jim Nation and Wittko Francke were very good friends, and here is Jim Nation.
Well, it's an honor for me to be able to remember Wittko Francke. I considered Vitko a good friend. We are charter members of the Society of Chemical Ecology, and so I've known him for a very long period of time now, and I've always felt that he and I had a good friendship. We saw each other at meetings. I think I was fortunate to be able to attend all of the first 13 or 14 meetings. Then I had to, for some reason, don't remember now why, but I didn't get to attend all the meetings right after that, but I did attend a number of other meetings, including the one in Hamburg. Vitko was such a wonderful host there in Hamburg, and I remember so well the elaborate dinner that he had, and I know that Vitko was a connoisseur of wines, and so he treated us to 4 or 5 different kinds of wines and explained what each one was, where it came from and so forth. It was a wonderful experience. I gave him a first copy of my textbook at that point, and I remember Vitko said, "Well, I guess I'll have a lot of reading to do." I doubt that he actually read the book, because it wasn't really a book about chemical ecology. It was a book about insect physiology, and Vitko was pretty busy with chemical ecology, so I doubt that he read the book. But it was a joy for me to attend that meeting in Hamburg. And I was also treasurer of the society for 9 years. Vitko was very helpful with attempting to raise money, and he was always very supportive of my efforts to do as good a job of keeping up with the funds as possible. When I was editor of the Journal of Chemical Ecology, I depended very heavily upon Vitko to review manuscripts sent into the journal, particularly if they were primarily about synthesis and organic chemistry. It was a shock to me to learn that Vitko had passed away from COVID. So many people have had COVID. It's been a tremendous, terrible disease all over the world. I'm so sorry that this sort of thing happened to Vitko, and it's a great loss to the Society of Chemical Ecology and to the Journal of Chemical Ecology that we no longer have Vitko with us. I'm appreciative of this opportunity to speak about him and to remember him. And I remember him very fondly, as always a very cheerful and open and honest scientist. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Vitko was a great fundraiser for the society, but what would he do if he could not find enough sponsorship? I would like to engage the more than 200 participants today and ask you in a poll here, what would be, what do you think would be the Vitko would do? There's a poll for you to participate. Please participate. We have 200 participants. I want to engage all the participants, and if there's an opportunity after the event here, we're going to open the mic for everyone. So please vote there, and I want you to share your opinion on that. So there are different, number one, create a fake sponsor, borrow money from a bank, sell an old instrument on eBay, ask IC for more funds, sell more bottles of wine from some bottles of wine from his cellar. I'll give a little bit more time for that. We have 40 seconds going. And I see that people prefer to say that he sells some bottles of wine from his cellar. That's got 62% so far. In 1 minute, I'll end the poll, and we continue with the presentation. So that's 59 seconds, 1 minute now, and here are the results of the poll. So the majority of people who vote, 75 of them, says that Vitko would sell some bottle of wine for his cellar, so to generate the money for the sponsorship. There's one person that knows the right answer for that, and that's Kenji Francke, his elder son.
Hi everybody, my name is Kenji Francke. I am Vitko's eldest son. I know that some of you know me from your various days in Rheinbeck and Hamburg. It's great to be here for this extraordinary symposium. Some of you even know me since I was a small boy. When Walter asked me to contribute to this event, I first wanted to register. And in the online registration form, the field company is a mandatory field. And as I'm not working in the area of chemical ecology, I wanted to make something up. And I'd like to use this as the core for the little anecdote that Walter was asking for, and that I'm going to talk about. For my registration, I chose to use the company Daaks Chemicals. They are spelled D-A-A-K-S minus chemicals. And if you look them up, you will immediately find them listed as one of the main sponsors of the ICE annual meeting in Hamburg in 2002. Maybe some of you who joined that meeting back then in 2002 were wondering about this totally unknown company that was listed between giant sponsors such as BASF, BAT, Bayer, and others. You would also not find any other hint in the entire web about them. And I think my father never disclosed what was really behind that donation. I think he would agree that this symposium is a good occasion to disclose the secret. Vitko himself, of course, was behind this donation. And Daaks Chemicals was just a fake company invented by him. My father was a humble man, and I guess you all know how passionate he was about chemical ecology and how eager he was to support everybody who was sharing this passion. He simply wanted the ICE Congress in Hamburg to be the greatest possible experience for all of the participants. And now you know also about the secret behind Daaks Chemicals. But there is maybe one more thing that you wonder about, and that is why Daaks Chemicals? Why that name? When Vitko was a little boy and my grandmother, who was a research forest zoologist, had guests visiting their home, he was typically joining these invites, dressed up as a friendly elderly woman called Mrs. Daaks. The guests and Vitko himself always had a lot of fun with Mrs. Daaks' appearances. Mrs. Daaks' appearances even became an institution for people visiting my grandmother. Vitko was an extraordinary and loving man, scientist and father, with exhaustless energy and creativity.
Thank you, Christian. And Christian also sent this photo with the legend that says a picture of Vitko after having worked under our small cottage on the lonely island in Finland to fix the drain of the Saône, an event that happened every year. To Vitko, the annual meetings of the International Society of Chemical Ecology were like family reunions. It's like the same sense that we have for the Thanksgiving in the United States. And that's highlighted in a video that he recorded at the meeting in Lithuania, a message to Hanna Mustaparta on the occasion of her 7th birthday.
Great, great to see. I know Hanna for, well, 25 years, but I didn't know that she's 70th birthday now, because she's always behaving and looking much younger than 70. And I appreciate her work all the time. So one of the pioneers of electrophysiology. And of course she was active in many fields, particularly in bark beetles. So hello, Hanna. Great to hear that you're still around, and we miss you at our family gathering around here. Hope to see you at one of the other meetings. So all the very best to you for the next decade, so to speak, and then hopefully we're going to meet and stay together, and you dancing with a glass on your forehead. You remember that? It's always very impressive. So all the very best to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sometimes he had too much fun, family reunions, so sometimes he had too much fun in this meeting, as highlighted here in this meeting of 2016 in Foz do Iguaçu in Brazil. Vitko left behind a legacy of second and third generation chemical ecologists. One of them is Jan Bergman. Is Jan.
20 years ago, I was a PhD student in Vitko's lab. It was a great time in many aspects because Vitko provided a scientifically but also socially stimulating environment. However, even more impressive, and I will be always grateful for this, was the continuous support Vitko gave me after I left his lab. He always took the time when I needed some advice or when I wanted to meet him for lunch every time I visited Germany. Vitko, there are so many memories. You have contributed in so many ways, more than you probably would have imagined, to make me the person I am today. So, Vitko, thank you and farewell. I know you will be looking after me for always.
Thank you, Jan. Like I said, the chalcogram was Vitko's favorite compounds, but he identified a huge number of compounds we would not have time to cover in one session like today. But I highlight here some of the compounds that he identified, and always, for him, it was important that the compounds were biologically active, and he had a very strong interest in compounds that are chiral compounds with a stereochemical center. Vitko also had a large network of collaborators and friends, one of them, Cameron Oschlager.
He was a very enthusiastic man. Chemical ecology is much more advanced today than it would have been if Wittko weren't part of the group. You have to remember that he was born around 1940 in a small town south of Hamburg. He would have spent a portion of his first 5 years in a bomb shelter, since World War II was raging in Europe at the time, and particularly in Germany in 1945. He emerged from these experiences to go to school in what would have been a very emotional time for school children. And about the time he was entering university, the first pheromone was discovered. I have no way to know if he knew of the discovery, but his subsequent work on pheromones occupied his mind from about a decade after their discovery until he left us last year. When he wasn't teaching, doing what he could to develop the chemistry department at the University of Hamburg, he was executing chemical ecology. The only complaint that I ever heard him make was that the bottom floor of his building had been converted into a shopping mall to generate revenue for the university. I took this to mean that the university occupied prime real estate. Wittko constantly participated in groups that formed to solve a problem. The solution of one problem often led to a new group formed to discover remarkable things about chemicals that insects were using, what they needed to do to survive. His career was truly remarkable, and his contributions so diverse that they defy total recall. Collaborators on his over 480 papers were located on every continent. He was a lead chemical decoder in hundreds of studies in chemical ecology that trained students and contributed to the development of chemical ecology in parts of the world that now boast vibrant chemical ecology groups. Wittko also fostered exchange of ideas through tireless work in scientific societies and writing numerous compilations that organize key aspects of chemical ecology. I pulled out a few titles from his recent works to show you the breadth of his talents. Take a 1999 work, Orchid Pollination by Sexual Swindle, or a 2012 work, How Social Parasitic Bumblebee Sneaks into Power of Reproduction. And as late as 2017, evidence that cerambycid beetles mimic vespid wasps in odor as well as appearance. As Jerry Meinwald said, you only know if your contributions are meaningful after you pass away. If the people left behind miss your contributions, then you were making meaningful contributions. We will miss you, Wittko.
Thank you, Cam. Many collaborators and friends met Vitko for the first time in chemical ecology meetings. Jeff Alders is one of them.
I think the first time I met Vitko was in 1988 in Athens, Georgia. It was one of our society chemical ecology meetings, and we had a party at Murray Blom's house, and it was a lot of fun, and it was pretty crazy. Murray had a hat collection, just happened to have a bomb and a missile in the basement, and everybody was wearing hats, and Vitko was wearing a British World War II helmet, and yeah, it was a great party, and I learned to know and love Vitko over the years by going to these chemical ecology meetings. The last one I went to was in Hungary. I think it was 2019, and Vitko was there with his wife. And over all this time, and I've been to most of the meetings of our Chemical Ecology Society and gotten to know Vitko better and better. He's a great scientist, an inspiration for me to participate in this Chemical Ecology International Society. And he socially was a lot of fun, and for me and all of my travails with various wives and women, he was actually quite sympathetic. And so I'm sorry to see him go, even though everybody has to go sometime. It was sort of a shock, and I did want to say farewell, Vitko. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Everyone mentions that Vitko was a wonderful host, but also he was a wonderful guest. Here's David Wood.
I'm David Wood. I spent wonderful days with Wittko Francke in California, as you might expect. And he stayed on our campus in the Women's Faculty Club because that was the very nicest facility. And we met then again on my 80th birthday at a meeting in San Diego. And we had a wonderful time. And he's my longtime friend. And of course, everybody is a good person if they like bark beetles. You don't have to love them, but so Vitko is a wonderful guest, and he always has something new to give you, like maybe a bottle of wine or an unusual beer. And we enjoyed talking about, of course, insects and chemical ecology, and how much joy we have derived from this as scientists and as friends. I miss him. He's just a fun person to be with. And you don't get that closely connected to too many people, even though you see a lot of people and you go to lots of meetings and so on. And some people, as we all know, are more important to us than others. And Wittko was one of those persons in my life. And you too, Walter, okay? You fit into that category, all right?
Thank you, Dave. Today, some of his long-term collaborators share new facets about Vitko's personality, including his favorite bird.
The owl. Gabor, would you like to take Vitko for a sightseeing tomorrow in the afternoon? Asked Miklos from me. Yes, of course, I answered, and had absolutely no idea what to do. It happened 40 years ago. I was a beginner, and Vitko was a world-famous professor. He visited us for a couple of days in Budapest. Well, shall I take Vitko to the historic Castle District, or to a beautiful Marguerite Island, or to the Galiot Hill? However, Vitko didn't seem too much interested in any of that. Vitko, shall we go to the flea market? That sounds like a good idea, he said. I was shocked. I was just joking. The flea market had a very bad reputation at that time. It was all second-hand items, very bad quality, pickpockets. It was almost something like a no-go zone. Well, but what to do? So, next day we went. First shop, second-hand motorbikes, broken, worn, very bad quality. Next shop, clothes, worn, torn, dirty. Third shop, kitchen tools, broken spoons, rusty knives. Suddenly, Vitko stopped in the front of a shop. There were toys for children. Puppets, dolls of plastic. One leg is missing, arm is missing, head is missing. Vitko was standing there motionless. His eyes were watching their dolls. Suddenly, he saw something. He was focusing on something. Can I have that owl, please? Shopkeeper gave it to him. Vitko took it in his hands, examined it carefully. Gabor, take it in your hands. He passed it to me. It was heavy. It was solid bronze. It was the only valuable item in that shop. It was an admiration on the shopkeeper's face. Vitko bought it. On our way home, Vitko told me that actually owl is his favorite bird. Something like a Kabbalah. I'm pretty sure that this owl is now sitting somewhere in Rheinberg, in Vitko's and Heinrich's house, as a memory of our friendship. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabor. Vitko has an impressive interest in biological questions, and that per se impressed many biologists, including Tristan White.
What really impressed me about Vitko was his wide interest in biological questions and his readiness to collaborate. Chemical ecology really needs its chemists. As biologists, we can study responses and investigate evolution. But without really good chemists, we can't get very far. Vitko very generously shared his analytical and synthetic expertise. In the future, we need more people like him, chemists with a keen interest in biology. And we need funding to enable chemists to be full partners, even when the biology is fascinating, but the chemistry is too hard for a biologist, but not exciting to chemist peers. We'll all miss Vitko.
Thank you, Tristan. Vitko is a man of his word, and here is one of his best friends, Sherman McNeil.
I counted Heidi and Vitko amongst my very dearest friends for the last 30 years. And on many occasions, I had the pleasure of visiting them in Rheinbeck. And as you know, if those of you who have been there, you are received with open arms and the most incredible hospitality. And of course, on many occasions, it did involve a little drop of wine or two. And in this picture here, you can see Vitko holding a bottle of 1967 Riesling that he and Heidi had bought many years before, that they were kind enough to share with me. And at the end of it, I said, my goodness, you know, Vitko, that was fantastic. And he said, yeah, that is a pity. It is the last bottle. Sadly, over the years, that had happened many, many times to the point where I became known in their household as Last Bottle McNeil. But we did get to see each other in many places around the world. And on several occasions, Vitko came to Canada and visited with me. And one time when Heidi was unable to come, he came when we were in Quebec City. And as you can see here, has a little bit more snow than they did have in Germany. He was disappointed. He wanted -35 and we only gave him -20. But anyway, he was here. We had a great time for the week that he was there. And I know, as you can see in this picture, he and I both enjoy eating together. And so what we decided to do was go to a restaurant where they served local game. And I thought Vitko would enjoy that. And it was really quite a well-known restaurant. I thought he would enjoy it. So off we went. When we got there, we were sat down and it was extremely cold in the restaurant at the time. And we had to wait for a while. Well, we didn't get live music, as you could see in this picture here, but they did have a sound system going on and you could hear the music coming through. And Vitko suddenly looked up and he said, "That is a wonderful piece." And I said, something, knowing nothing about music or very little, I said, "Yeah, well, isn't it Haydn or Bach or whatever it was?" And he scathingly looked at me because obviously he is a very talented musician. And he said, "Jeremy, I have 3 or 4 copies of this, but this is the best recording of this piece I have ever heard. What is it?" So I called the waiter and I said, "By the way, could you tell us what this is?" And he said, "Oh, I know it perfectly because the owner of this restaurant knows nothing about music, so I bring my own and that's what you all get to listen to." So he gave us the information and he said, "But it's sort of out of sale. You can no longer get it." So in the few days that Vitko was still in Quebec, we wandered around. We tried to find it everywhere. We phoned people, no luck at all. And on the day Vitko was leaving, I said, "Look, I will continue to try and, but I'm no guarantees." And he looked at me jokingly, or I thought he was joking. And he said, "Jeremy, if you find a copy of that, you get it for me. And in exchange, I will give you a bottle of Richebourg," which is a very famous Burgundy. And if you know anything about wine, you know that the cost of a CD versus the cost of the bottle is at least a factor of 10. So I jokingly said, "Oh, sure, yeah, we'll do that." Wandered everywhere. Both of us even contacted the company that recorded it, I believe in Japan, and they all said, "No, it no longer exists." So I'd sort of forgotten about it. And one day I was walking in a little street in Quebec that I very rarely went, and there was a shop going out of business sale. It was a music shop. So I went in, dingy little place, asked for it. The man rummages around and he said, "My goodness, I'd forgotten I even had it. It's the last copy. Here you are." So I bought it, didn't say anything to Vitko, obviously. And a few months later, I was going to visit them. So I turned up at the house and we were sitting chatting. I said, "Oh, by the way, Vitko, I've got something for you that I think you'd like." And I gave it to him and he was absolutely excited. "This is fantastic. I really given up on it." And a few hours later, we went downstairs into the wine cellar as we usually did. And you can see here, he's pulling out a bottle of wine and I'm watching, not thinking very much about it. Pulls out the bottle, turns around, hands it out to me and said, "This is an exchange." I looked, I said, "Vitko, that's a bottle of Richebourg. I cannot take that for a 35 Canadian dollar CD. And he just looked at me and he said, "I promised you. It is yours. I am holding it out and I am going to hold it for 3 seconds. And if you don't take it, I'm going to let it go because it's yours." And if you know anything about Vitko, I knew enough to go, "I'll take that bottle," because it would have broken my heart and his to see it on the floor. But that's the story, one of the many with Vitko that I had over the years, but it underlines one thing. When Vitko decided he wanted something, you knew he would do everything he could to get it, and he always kept his word afterwards. I'm going to miss all the travel with you, but you'll always be in my heart.
Thank you, Jeremy. For some collaborators, Vitko became a father figure, member of the family, and even a third grandfather. Here's Paulo Zarbin.
Well, there are so many things that I could say about Vitko. And well, he was first my great collaborator in the lab. We had the opportunity to work together on identification of several pheromones, and especially on curculione beetles, when we had the opportunity to identify a new molecule, a new pheromone. Vitko, he always prepare a kind of trophy, and in this trophy he's plot the chemical structure of the molecule, the name that you gave to this molecule, and also his name and my name in this trophy. So this was really fantastic. I keep those in my desk, in my office, of course. But much more than this work aspect, Vitko was very close from myself. We were really good friends, and not only by myself, by my whole family. He came to Brazil very often. We had a project together, and the first time that he came to my place was in 2003. And Claudia, those days, she was pregnant, and Vitko was cooking for us. He is in my place. That was fantastic. And only after, and then after 17 years, now my son Juliano, he very often called him as his third grandfather. So that was a great honor for me, and more than that, to be so close from Vitko. We really had a very good relationship. I'm very proud to be close as well from Heidi, his wife, and Mikhail, one of his son. So to be also close to his family, it was a great honor for me. Thank you, Vitko, to be so kind in all the moments that we have met together, to be so kind with me, with my family, for your wonderful friendship, for all the support that you gave to my career along the years, and be sure that we all will miss you very much. Thank you.
Vitko co-authored so many papers, but he did the work. He was very involved in the writing of this manuscript. Here's Manfred Ayase.
I could now tell about many nice stories. However, I will stick with one more event that happened in the last year in one of my last meetings with Vitko. We wanted to work on a manuscript, and Vitko asked me to call him by phone. I did so, and Vitko was, as usual, critical, however, at the same time, very constructive, especially when we were talking about chemical aspects of the manuscript. Suddenly, he told me that he was in the hospital at the moment, and that he would have only about 1 more hour time before he was going to have a surgery. Of course, I was very worried about Vitko and said to him, Vitko, why didn't you tell me before? We do not have to work on the manuscript now. However, he insisted on working on the manuscript, and this event very well shows one of Vitko's character traits. His energy, his strengths, without thinking about his own well-being. Vitko never gave up. Vitko, I miss you very much. Your excellence and your creativity in discussions about science, and even more, I miss you as a friend. I will miss the meetings we had while visiting each other in Hamburg or in Ulm, the wonderful dinners with excellent food and of course excellent wine, many evenings with enjoyable, pleasant conversations. However, Vitko will live on in our hearts and in our minds, and I will always remember Vitko. Thank you, Vitko, and farewell.
Thank you, Manfred. So Vitko wrote these emails to Gary Felton, the editor-in-chief of Journal of Chemical Ecology, in December 19. Dear Gary, I have some serious gut problems, no cancer, which were cured in a complex surgery. So far, so good. However, meanwhile, I got COVID infected, accompanied by pneumonia, and I'm now fighting for my life. So please excuse my slow work speed. He's a man that's fighting for his life, and asking for excuse to be excused for being slow in the communication for his work as associate editor for the journal. Attached, I'm sending the correct text and so on. Very unfortunately, the very primitive electronic system in the hospital cannot pass the firewall of our university, and therefore I have to use some tricks. Some other words there, best regards, to which Gary Felton responded with wishes for a speedy recovery. And then, in December 22nd, 5 days before he passed away, he wrote back to Gary Felton and said, "Dear Gary, thank you for your good wishes. Things are not easy. COVID is seriously fighting on me, but I will manage. Many thanks for your kind offer. Most of the manuscripts are back to the authors, either through the Springer system or upon direct contact between the authors and me. Let me finally wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and a happy COVID-free 2021. So it's very clear here that's a man that was very generous with his time and very committed to the field of chemical ecology. Here's Kobe Shaw.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kobe Shaw. I'd like to say a few words about Wittko Francke. We will all miss Wittko tremendously. Wittko is a friend. It was always great to see him at chemical ecology meetings where he was always surrounded by multiple generations of friends and chemical ecology admirers. Wittko did not miss a beat when he transitioned from elegant chemistry and chemical ecology to the elegance of a great bottle of wine. It was a lot of fun to be around. I especially remember the 2002 meeting in Hamburg. We had a great time in the great city of Hamburg, but what is most memorable to me is the wine tasting that Wittko and Heidi hosted at their house. This was a really fun memory. In fact, I remember more of that wine tasting than the meeting itself. Wittko is an incredible scientist. Perhaps many people are not aware of how generous Wittko is with his science. In this regard, Wittko shared a trait with Kenji Mori and Jerry Meinwald, two other great chemical ecologists that we have lost. They were able to synthesize compounds that without which us biologists could not do our work. Wittko also many times corrected my chemistry, which I very much appreciated him doing before I published some mistakes. So Wittko was very good at reaching out to biologists and explaining the chemistry and making sure that the chemical ecology was done properly. Wittko was very much a community-oriented person, not only providing us with chemicals, but also serving the community by fixing mistakes and by editing papers, for example, for the Journal of Chemical Ecology. Wittko was also passionate about chemical ecology as a society. Of course, he was president of the International Society of Chemical Ecology, but beyond that, he remained connected to the governance of the society. I served as president in 2019, and on a regular basis, I sought Wittko's advice on many occasions. His email responses to my questions were never short. He had a lot to say. He presented a historical context, presented pros and cons to various arguments, and what was really impressive, all of this was from memory. He never looked things up. I offered to relieve Wittko of a task that he has done for many, many years of purchasing and engraving the ISC medals. Wittko's answer was not yet. He wanted to do it for one more time, one more year. Of course, you all know that the 2020 meeting was canceled because of COVID, but Wittko was right on time, right on target, and he got the medals that we asked him to get. Wittko was and remains a giant in chemical ecology. His passion, advice, friendship, and sense of humor will be sorely missed. His overall impact in our discipline will, of course, remain forever. I want to thank Heidi for sharing Wittko with us for so many years. I want to thank Walter for organizing this remembrance.
Thank you, Kobe. Vitko has an acute sense of smell, says Baldwin Torto.
So he visited us in Nairobi, and it was for about a week. It was a lot of fun working with him. I recall when we walked into the Coffee Berry Bora reading room, he burst out, pyrazines. What do you smell it? I said no, but anyway, it struck me that his love of wines made the difference, that his sense of smell was much, much better than mine. And then we visited other labs, but he was really looking forward to the chemistry lab. So we got into the mass spectrometer laboratory. And again, his bubbly nature came out to say, this is the heart of chemical ecology. And I reminded him that, what about sensory physiology? What about behavior? And he said, okay, 2 hearts. But anyway, this is the bigger heart. The mass spectrometer is the bigger heart. It was indeed a lot of fun working with Wittko. He made a significant impact on our Coffee Berry Bora research and gave us several lectures. I recall the ones on artifacts, misidentification of semiochemicals, and then, methyl branched alkanes. I think Wittko gave more to society than he received. And we'll forever remember all the good things he's done for mankind. Thank you so much, Wittko. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Baldwin. He had also a very good sense of taste. He is John Hildebrand.
Okay, well, let me say what a pleasure it is to be here in this wonderful celebration, thanks to you, Walter. And I want to send very warm greetings to Heidi, Christian, and Michael, and my personal condolences once again on this huge loss. At this point in the meeting, everything important has already been said, and everything that's been said is very important. So there isn't much left for me, but I do want to share a wonderful memory. And I want to say in advance of that every encounter with Vitko is unforgettable. And I think this meeting has been a testimony to that. So on 2 occasions, I had the wonderful privilege of being a guest in one of the wine tasting and dinner events at home of Heidi and Vitko. And this is one in 2004 with some of his colleagues from chemistry in Hamburg, and also our dear colleague Gunnar sitting there and smiling, as you see. And you see that there was no shortage of outstanding wine. Next one, please. And you see here at work what I think is the most elegant analytical organic chemistry lab in the world, which is Vitko's nose or olfactory system. I think it should have been studied in its own right. I say that as a neuroscientist who studies olfaction. I think it was incomparable. And he was getting wound up here at the dinner as we tasted wines and made notes about our impressions. Next, please. And of course, Vitko, once encouraged by the effects of the wine and by the enthusiasm of the guests, he couldn't restrain himself. So he rose and he became a professor of enology, giving an elegant discourse about his impressions and the sources of the wines and the winemakers he had met in their vineyards. And finally, he couldn't restrain himself any further, and he became the great professor that we know him to have been. Next, please. Where he emerged from his wine cellar, not with more wine, but in his full garb, and carried on his discourse. I can never get this out of my mind every time I'm at a wine tasting. There's never been a wine tasting anywhere else in the world, in my experience, that compares with one in the home of Heidi and Vitko, with Vitko as the presiding authority. So let me just end by saying that I am so grateful to him for his scientific inspiration to me, his constructive criticism and collaboration and research. He was a model of joie de vivre and passion about everything he did. And he was indescribably generous, as all of which has been noted already. Finally, I think he's a role model for all of us in the time left to us. Thank you so much. to all, to you, Walter, to the family, and to dear Vitko and Heidi.
And Vitko is a great scientist, wonderful colleague, but how is he as a father? And there are only two people in the world that can answer this question. One is Kenji Francke, another one is Mikhail Francke. So he's Mikhail.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank you all so much for organizing this fantastic and truly outstanding event. I'm overwhelmed and deeply moved by so many people taking part in this webinar, wanting to celebrate the life and legacy of Wittko Francke. So, how was Vitko as a father? I think most of you have actually got to know him with all his amazing qualities. I guess there was no difference between Vitko as a scientist and colleague and him being a caring father. He was someone you could always rely on. When you needed his help, he was there for you. You could call him in the middle of the night, and he would be there for you. If you needed some advice, you could always ask him. He was the rock in our life. In many of your condolences, you wrote that Vitko was a role model, a true friend, and some of you even called him a father figure who was always 100% committed and who took responsibility. Yes, he was definitely someone to look up to. Some of you called him a lovable rebel, and I would agree with you that he was absolutely unique and someone who loved the unconventional. He loved his job, and he very much loved his family. Being together with a family and spending time with us was possibly the most important thing in Vitko's life. So when we were young, we always spent those unforgettable summers in Finland. 5 weeks on a lonely island in the middle of nowhere, just us and the wilderness. Fishing, swimming, playing games, being together. How much he loved that. As kids and teenagers, we used to play football in the garden, and he happily was a part of the crowd of friends. And I personally also met friends for life through Vitko and his scientific bunch. People I've known for more than 40 years now, and I'm grateful for that. Being together with his beloved family made Vitko happy. And sometimes when we sat down to have dinner, he looked at us and his eyes were filling with tears because he was so happy and thankful. That's what also happened when we were together on his 80th birthday, just 4 weeks before his passing. He had a number of health issues and he was a little concerned about the operation that he was about to undergo. But he was so happy about all the family being harmonically together. Generosity, responsibility, and commitment. That was our father Vitko. But far and foremost, it was his unconditional love for the ones he cared about and loved. That we will never forget. And he lives on in all of us. So again, thank you so much for everything. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for this amazing and unforgettable event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mikhail. There is no time to tell all stories about Vitko, but there are 2 stories that Wendell would love to tell us. Wendell.
I want to thank Walter Leal for including me in this memorial program for Wittko Francke. We all know what a great guy Vitko was, so I'm just going to give a little perspective from someone who was in the first phases of pheromone research in the United States in the mid-60s. Over the first decade, there were many moth pheromones identified that used blends of the E and Z geometric isomers. We could synthesize them ourselves so they could be used for behavioral studies, antennal research studies, and for insect control. But by the mid-80s, Research included pheromone studies on insects of various orders, and some of those species used sophisticated structures that contain chiral centers. Now these complex plus and minus optical isomers had to be synthesized. Many of us didn't have the means to synthesize these complex compounds, but then, da-da-da-da, along comes a brilliant chemist from Germany who is enthusiastic about insects and chemical ecology and has a capability to synthesize these compounds. He collaborated with many scientists around the world and made tremendous contributions on many projects. Now, one of the benefits to me was that his enthusiasm for these insect projects enabled us to meet at many international meetings and symposia. He was this jovial, optimistic, and outgoing person who everybody loved. There's not time to tell all the stories about him and what we encountered, but I'll just recall a couple instances that come to mind that kind of tells a little bit about him. In 1988, Murray Blum hosted an ISCE meeting in Athens, Georgia, and he had some folks over to the house one night after the meeting. Vitko at one point found an old German army helmet and put it on and was photographed. And to me, he looked like Colonel Klink from the Hogan Heroes. And that just shows what kind of a humor he had. And another thing that comes to mind is his enthusiastic participation in the ping pong tournaments that Gary Blomquist would set up at international meetings. And one of the last memorable times was when my wife Joanna and I went to the ISCE meeting in Jena in 2007. And Vitko invited a small number of scientists to his house for a tasting of wines, some that I brought from the Finger Lakes wineries and some he had from the European wineries. And Joanna had the pleasure of meeting Vitko at several previous meetings and really enjoyed this visit to his house. And I'll let her say a few words about that.
I just want to say Vitko was one of the most remarkable persons I ever met. Going to his home in 2007 and meeting there with he, a whole batch of friends, and his wife Heidi was just the trip of a lifetime.
And now, in memory of the wineries and of Vitko, I want to give a shout out to all the participants who have gathered here today for the celebration of Vitko's life. Prost!
Prost!
Bye.
Saúde!
I am the lion. Yes, okay. I am the metropolitan lion.
You need the sound though too to go.
And like Kobe Shaw said, thank you, Heidi, for sharing Vitko with us. Yes, Heidi.
My dear friends, I would like to thank you deeply for this wonderful event, celebrating the life and legacy of Vitko. Thank you so very much for taking part in this webinar. Thank you for your lovely presentations and your beautiful and warm-hearted words. Let me also thank for all the condolences I received after Vitko's passing. You were a great support in difficult and very sad times. You all were part of Vitko's life, and so were you of mine. We met either at our home in Rheinbeek or in very different places all around the world. We all spent magnificent time together that I will never forget in my life. You certainly all have your very special memories about Vitko, but there is one thing that we all have in common and that unites us all. We are grateful that Vitko was a part of our life. Thank you so much for everything. Love to each of you.
Thank you, Hyde. You heard the story about Vitko being so generous that created a fake company to give his own private money. So in this opportunity, I would like to launch a fundraiser for a fund named Wittko Francke's Dax Chemical Fund. And that fund would be designated to International Society of Chemical Ecology for honor Vitko at the annual meetings on a regular basis in some format. And I'll leave it to the leadership of the society, the officers, to decide how to use that. But I would like to launch here today. And as an initial donation, I'm going to make a donation of $500 for this fund. And I hope that other of you can participate with a donation of an equal amount, a lower amount, or higher amount than that. And if you are prepared to do that, if you are in the panel, please state. And also, if you are a participant and you would like to participate and you don't mind me share your name here, please enter the information on the chat. I'm going to be monitored here. Again, so this is going to be a fund that we are going to start for the International Society of Chemical Ecology, and the number of the fund is going to be Wittko Francke's Dax Chemical Fund. And the fund is intended to for the society to use in some format that will let the society decide. You don't want to interfere with the business of the society. Let the society decide what the format, for example, could be a social gathering or a poster session with wine and the beers every meeting, something that brings back the memory of Wittko Francke at the annual meetings. Anyone in the panel that I would like you to say that I mentioned this to Bill Hanson because I knew that he was going to leave in a little bit earlier, and Bill Hanson already pledged also to make a contribution, a significant contribution. So we have two of you guys now. If you are like to say that, please. Yes. John Clardy also says here that he would like to contribute to that fund. So say, May Berenbaum, count on me with $1,000. Well, then thanks for organizing this event. Okay, so we have $1,000 for May Berenbaum. Kobe, shall you say?
Yes, this is Kobe. I would like to also contribute $1,000.
Okay, thank you very much, Kobe.
I'm in too. I'm in too, Kobe.
Walter,
Yes, Jean Piquet first.
Yes, indeed. I'll match that. Being of the older generation, we should put what we can in, I think. Yeah, $1,000 is great. I think maybe we should have a little bit of cultural diversity in the event. Vitko would have liked that. And maybe if we're going to have wine and beer, we could also have some soft drinks, but maybe some apple juice. Maybe even one time from some apples from the orchard in Renbeck, and planted, of course, by his father in very difficult times. That would be a wonderful memory if we could manage it. Thank you.
Very good. Very good idea also, the diversity thing. Let me read here the panel. In addition to May Berenbaum 1,000, there is also Chris Lofstead. Yes, please add me to the contributors. And Jerry McNeil adds $1,000 as well. John Hildebrand.
Yeah, I'm in too, Walter.
Okay, Paulo Zabin is in too.
Of course, I'd like to be one of the contribution of this.
Okay, good, very good. Paulo Zabin also, and John Hildebrand, right, John?
Yes, I'm in.
Do you have any suggestion? John Pickett confirm here, $1,000.
Yeah. I'll match John Pickett.
Okay, so the both Johns has $1,000. So that's good. Thank you very much for doing this. So as I counting here right now, we have Julia Kubanek also contributed. Didn't disclose the amount. That's fine. You don't have to disclose the amount if you don't want. This was really good. Thank you for the program. That's not a contribution. I'm looking at the contribution now if there are some other people that have contribution. Heraldo Lima also is contributing, a significant contribution from Brazil. He was a student with Jerry McNeil, and he's a good friend of also of Wittko Francke. Jan Bergman also contributing here. He's a former student from Wittko Francke. There's lots of contribution. If you don't have a chance to do that now, when we exit the webinar today, there is going to be an exit survey. And one of the questions of the survey that is anonymous, But if you wanted to disclose, to do that, you have to write your email for that one. So there's a survey there so that we can contribute to that during the survey. Jerry Zhu also, and they also suggest that we have a site to donate at the ISC website. That's a wonderful idea, Jerry. Thanks very much. So in addition to this here, I already talked to the treasurer. I didn't talk to the officers because I want to launch this thing here without any preconceived notion of how it's going to be. Okay, so I already talked to the treasurer. I'm going to write the check directly to her. And all these people that are making this contribution today, I'm going to communicate with them and give the address of Carrie Mouch. So she's the treasurer of the International Society of Chemical Ecology. So again, if you didn't do that now and you still want to do that, when we exit, or maybe via email, we can communicate. And Jerry also mentioned that there's going to be a site for that. I would like to thank all that help with this event, everyone that participate with this, making these wonderful videos. As you know, I had to trim some of these videos because we wanted to make a short event of 1 hour, and now it's 1 hour and 50 minutes. Even with the cuts that they give, I trim every single video that I received. I want also to thank Kathy Garvey, the communication specialist here at UC Davis, for helping with the organization. Steve Dana, a graphic designer and illustrator. This caricature and the design of the banner for the event was made by Steve Dana. Wittko Francke, born in November 28, 1940, left the ice in December 27, 2020. May his memory be a blessing. Descanse in pace, Vitko. Stay well, everyone. And if you would like, now I can make an open microphone for those that did not have a chance, the participants. So I will do that in a more informal way now that we have formally ended the meeting. So if there is anyone there that would like to say something, I will do my best here to try to find you, because there were still we have 150 participants. Some people already logged out, but it's going to be difficult to find. So if someone wants to say something, please raise your hand and I'll try to find you in the list here of attendees if you want, because that will be a session of open mic for anyone who would like to say something.
Yeah, Walter, first of all, let me say thank you for organizing this. I'd written out a longer elegy for Vitko, but a lot of you have said the things that I wanted to say. I just wanted to share a small memory, a lovely memory of a morning in Ventura, California at our second Gordon conference. John Hildebrand will remember this. When Vitko and Roman Kaiser were out on the balcony, and across the street from our hotel, the site of the conference, a large agricultural field had been fertilized overnight by manure. And instead of musing over phenolic compounds in a red wine, they were musing over whether the ortho, meta, or para version of cresol was present in the pig manure that had been used to fertilize the crop across the street. So John Hildebrand was right. Vitko had an extraordinary sense of smell, and it wasn't limited to fine beverages and spirits. He focused that special instrument on nearly anything that came across his olfactory senses. So thanks to all of you for honoring Vitko's memory and for giving me a chance to be here with you. We'll miss him very, very deeply.
Anyone else? If not, thank you very much. It was wonderful to have this opportunity to celebrate the life and the legacy of a wonderful chemical ecologist who gave us so much. My first award that I get in chemical ecology was thanks to Wittko Francke, that he whispered to Kenji Mori that they should give me an award in Japan, and that was many years ago. But we never forget the first one, and never forget the people that help you in your career. So thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. If you want to say something at the end, please feel free to do so either in the panel or in the chat. Thank you all.
Yes, Walter.
Thank you, Andrea.
Tremendous job, Walter. We all appreciate that.
Thank you, Colby. It's good to have you here.
Big effort, Walter. That was really great. Thank you.
Good day, everyone.